The Battlehosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to Battlehosts, a podcast, a website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Sean.
Hello.
And Matt.
Hello.
If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes to catch all the latest episodes. You can also follow us on Facebook under The Battlehosts. If you'd like to support The Battlehosts for as little as $1 a month, please visit patreon.com/TheBattlehosts. For $3 a month, you actually get access to our Discord chat where we discuss all things related to the hobby. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about starting a Space Marine army. Sean, you've been a long-time Space Marine player.
Yeah.
Was Space Marines your first army when you first started the game?
Yeah, technically. Terminators were my first army.
Terminators.
Space Marines just happened to come with all the Terminators.
Because you were, and it was Deathwing, right?
Yeah, Deathwing got me started.
The Bone Terminators.
Yeah.
What edition was that?
3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. I joined right at the end of 3.5.
Okay.
Actually, now that I think about it, I did build power armor before I built Terminators. I got that old Battle Force that gave you like 1,500 points, and it came with some Assault Marines and some tactical. It was like the old $90 box sets, but expanded.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it came with a Land Raider, I think, in it. And then I started just buying Terminators and didn't stop buying Terminators.
Yeah. How many Terminators do you have?
Now, if you include the ones that aren't built, 85, 90.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that APOC game.
yeah. I can run almost the entire first company of the Dark Angels, because...
And how many have seen the table in the past year and a half?
16.
I feel like they could. Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah, no, there are some plays now.
Yeah.
They have a spot.
Yeah. So I have tried to start and stop a Space Marine army many times. I'll talk about that in a minute. And Matt, you are just now starting a Space Marine army.
Yeah, and I was rabidly against it from 5th edition on because it. Let's be honest. The Space Marines used to be really boring. Guys, let's be honest here.
Agreed.
The only Space Marine army that I would even remotely think about making would be like a Raven Wing Dark Angels army because they're cool. The bikes are really cool, and you got Samael on his hover bike, and he's like the coolest kid in the 41st millennia because
he's amazing.
He's the only one in the Imperium that really had any hover stuff at that time.
Yeah,
and then you could also have him in his cool land speeder, and it was just cool.
Yeah,
I mean it was just cool. But Space Marines like for 5th and 6th and 7th was okay. Here's a tech squad with the last cannon. And here's another tech squad, but with a flamer. And here's another tech squad in a rhino. And then you had battle companies with like rhino, and it was all the same model. And it was so boring. And then they primaris things, and it got interesting.
Yeah, so the reason why we're talking about the show, basically the show is starting a Space Marine army. And so Matt and I I've gone farther down the path of building a Space Marine army. I've tried it many times. I feel like I'm kind of committed at this point. We'll talk a little bit about why we decided. And then also, Sean, from your perspective, you've been playing Space Marines for the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, have you play Guard as well, but have you played any non-Imperium armies ever?
How'd you get on this podcast?
we needed the Imperium.
I'm trying to think. Non-Imperium, I'm actually not sure. I had a Demon Hunters army at one point.
That's
was
Imperium.
That's Imperium.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So I'm playing like non-Space Marines, but I own some Eldar and some Necrons, but I never played them.
Yeah.
So
you're a dedicated Imperium player. That's good. Versus me, I've tried several times, and then Matt, you're just now dipping your toe into Imperium. Yeah.
Just now out of the Xenos.
And I think the reason we decided to start this episode about starting a Space Marine army is that there is just a lot. Like a lot. I mean, there's so much to digest in this codex and all the supplements, and we haven't even released all the supplements that it just takes a long time. And so this is, we're not going to talk about rules. This isn't a Space Marine Codex review. There's so much content here. We could probably have a Space Marine podcast from now till whenever and still have plenty of content. The whole point of this is just, where do you get started? Especially if you're brand new to Space Marines or you're brand even new to 40K, and you're like, I'm kind of interested in starting a Space Marine army. There's just so much to sift through. And we'll kind of just talk a little bit about like why we're getting started, some of the basics of Space Marines, and then how you can go down a path. I think the hardest part about Space Marines is just choosing which chapter to build or successor or picking the flavor that you want. So Like how do we choose like the Space Marine that makes sense for you?
Yeah.
All right. Now, before we get started, let's hear a word from our sponsor, DGT.
We all love Warhammer 40k, but sometimes games just take too long. Using a game timer is the best way to make sure games finish and for both players to get an equal amount of time. Check out the Easy Game Timer from DGT, manufacturers and designers of the timers officially sanctioned by the International Chess Federation. It's simple to set up and customize, and your settings are saved when it's turned off. It's easy to use with a large moving lever for changing turns and a clear digital readout. It's the most affordable and high-quality game timer on the market and is the choice of most 40k events. Whether you want to practice before a big event or you just want to be a better player, the Easy Game Timer from DGT is the perfect game timer for your 40k events. The DGT Easy Game Timer is available from many online retailers. Wholesale pricing is also available for tournament organizers. Check these fine clocks out at dgtnorthamerica.com. Speed up your game and improve your play with the Easy Game Timer from DGT.
And we're back. So our history of Space Marines. We talked about, Matt, you're just now starting. If you've never owned a Space Marine until like recently when you started?
Never owned a Space Marine until, unless you're talking about like broken parts of vehicles that I use as bases, like for my raid nights and stuff. Yeah.
And Sean, obviously you have all
Yeah.
of the Space Marines. And you chose Dark Angels. And have you had a generic Space Marine army though? Or has it always been Dark Angels?
So I have my successor, and then I have built models for other chapters. Like I have a fully painted Ultramarine Tactical Terminator Squad.
Okay.
So, Power Sword and Stormbolter, and then Fists and Stormbolters, and that was really fun.
Yeah.
And then I have like a few Fist models. I started a Heresy era Fists army back before Heresy models were easy to get. Back before Horus Heresy existed. It was right when they were first starting to release the Heresy marks.
Stuff? Yeah.
And so I got, some Mark 5s, some 4s, and definitely 3s and 2s. And just had a lot of fun doing that. So generic wise, no, I don't think I've ever run like...
Just built a generic Space Marine army, So when I started in 5th edition, I bought the box set Assault on Blackreach.
And that came with Marines, right?
Yeah, it came with Marines and Orcs.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't want to run just vanilla Space Marines. So I was looking around like, what Space Marines can I run? And at the time, Blood Angels was all the rage. So I took the Space Marine half of that and started building out like a Blood Angels force. So I bought like a Baal Predator, and at the time it was all assault squads.
Oh yeah.
So you had assault squads with the Sanguinary Priest, and you had Mephiston. I had the little pewter like Mephiston guy at one time. And I started building out this, and I had a Furiosa Dread. So I built out the Blood Angels part of it, and then on the Orc side, I started building out the Orc side. The idea, I was like, I'll play with my son. Well, my son was too young; he didn't really get into it, and so I just sort of. Those are the two armies I had for a while, and then Eldar came out, and then I just went Eldar, full-on Eldar, because that's what I really wanted. And then so I sold off the Orcs and sold off the Blood Angels, and that was it, and I was all into Eldar. And then 6th edition came out, and the box set for 6th edition was Dark Angels and Chaos. So I'm like, here's 2 more armies I can run. So I bought the
Vengeance
for...
Vengeance.
Dark
Vengeance?
Dark Vengeance.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
Vengeance.
Yeah,
That was a great
I got
box
2
set.
copies of that box.
That's a great box.
Yeah.
Amazing box.
Because
the Dark
those
Angels
were
models in those are
and it's funny, those Chosen models, they still haven't come out with plastic sculpts as good as those Chosen models for Chaos.
Yeah, the whole box was just great.
It was great. So I went in on that. I'm like, I'll start a Dark Angels army. So I actually owned more Terminators and things that I want to admit. I started building it, but then Eldar again sort of pulled me away from it.
Yeah.
So I sold the Dark Angels army, and then so
you damn fallen.
I know. And then 7th edition Battle Company came out, and I'm like, you know what? I'll start a Battle Company army. See, this is the trend.
Yeah.
I at one time owned about 7 Rhino chassis, 5 drop pods. I know.
Oh, great.
And I've since sold all this.
Yeah.
This is all my hoarding tendencies. And I was going to build. First, I was like, I'll do Raven Guard. No, I'll do Iron Hands. No, I'll do. And then eventually, again, Eldar. And then Harlequins kind of took my fancy, and I sort of took the Battle Company and shelved it. And then this edition came out, and I bought the Dark Imperium box set, thinking again that I would start them both up.
Yep.
And I never really did anything with them until now. And so the question is, why are we starting Space Marines now?
Yeah, what changed, Mark?
What has changed? And so I'll go over to Matt. What is... You talked about them being boring before. What's different now?
Man, have you seen some of these models that they're coming out? I mean, intercessors are cool and everything, but like aggressors are cool. Like they're like the actual like Terminator that was cool and like went to college and everybody wanted to be their friend and not like a normal Terminator, you know?
I feel personally attacked right now. I still like Terminators, okay?
But the aggressors are like,
they're cool.
They need to upscale. They do something with them. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, the all the cessors, the intercessors, and the interceptors, and I mean, they're just doing really cool things with all those. They're coming out with new tanks for them. I mean, they haven't come out with a drop pod yet for them or anything like that. I don't know if that's in the works or anything, but it's just they've really made it more dynamic because before it was Rhino, Attack Marine, Assault Marines, which are still hilarious if you see Assault Marines.
Yep.
And it was just really boring, but it's really dynamic. That was always what got me with Xenos is that everything is dynamic. Eldar, there's all these aspects, and each aspect is very functionally different from the other aspect. A striking scorpion does something way different than a fire dragon.
Yeah.
Okay. Witches do things way different than Kabalite warriors and grotesques and things. They do different things. It's not samey like Space Marines. All these primaris models are really cool.
It's the difference between having like a multi-purpose tool that does everything kind of well, and then that was kind of the Marines were supposed to be that way, right?
And having a super specialized
units for different pieces. Yeah,
and that's part of why when I ran, once I got into 5th, definitely I was running a tri-wing Dark Angels army where I was running Ravenwing and Deathwing, and then Greenwing, which is, the regular power armored guys.
Yeah.
Because there were that many differences, I had bike squads and I had Terminators and then I had the tactical Marines running around in Razorbacks.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I get you. Like that's much more interesting than the Battle Company. The Battle Company was just a horrible way, I think, of designing
it was literally
Marines.
a spam list.
Yeah, it's Marines should not be a spam list.
Yeah.
Like in terms of theme and what makes them interesting.
Yeah.
When it's like, oh well, I lost a Rhino and a unit of Marines, whatever.
Yeah.
It
should matter. It should matter. Yeah.
I mean, I think those 2,000 point lists, and I'm using air quotes, which is great for podcasts.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It was 2,000 points. It ended with all those free Rhinos. Those of you that don't remember Battle Company, basically you got all free. All your Rhinos and all your drop pods were free.
Yeah, it's like 2,500 points plus.
2,500 points, and they would all be the same unit.
Yeah.
And so even though it was 2,600 points on the board, it was no more than 4 or 5 different units.
Yeah.
It was.
It wasn't super exciting, and also, you're right. The thing about the other races is that every units have sort of specific unique roles, which I thought was really cool about them.
Yeah.
Versus Marines, where it's just a lot of the same. They all did something pretty well. They just flooded the board with bodies. That was a Battle Company version of it.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was probably that. It cheapened Marines. It made them feel like just disposable troops.
Yeah, I brought up the idea of power fantasies in games before.
Yeah.
It's a term that I borrow from Riot Games, but I really like the idea. The idea is that when you look at this character or you look at this army, you should have these ideas about what are you playing that to feel, right?
Yeah.
What is what is the power of this character that is attractive in a competitive game?
Yeah.
And for Eldar, it's being wily and using your tools correctly and using these hyper specialized but pretty fragile units. Like kind of knife's edge kind of play, especially for Dark Eldar.
Yeah.
For Orcs, it's that idea of here we go and teleporting and throwing guys forward.
Yeah.
And then in Space Marines, it's like, okay, well, what are they supposed to be?
Yeah.
Well, in the lore, they're like hyper competent and aggressive special forces that land and attack the enemy at most head on, and small teams of Marines are incredibly deadly and they can change battles by themselves. And then you get to the 7th edition Battle Company, it's like, well, this looks more like a guard army.
Yeah, it was. It was
really
guard army
does.
with 3-up armor. Yeah. And really, if you look at a lot of the fan fiction stuff on YouTube, but the Astartes, the Astartes YouTube videos. Kind of show, and it's basically just 1-minute clips, and it's fan fiction or fan created video, but it is exactly what you think Marines are.
Yes.
They board a ship. There's just a small unit of them, but they're basically mowing through very disciplined ranks of Trader Guard, and Psychers and stuff, and that's exactly how you want Marines to feel like.
And actually, step one for starting a Space Marine army, I think, is go watch Astartes on YouTube. Go educate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that's that kind of feeling you want. And Marines didn't used to have that.
No.
I think Marines now feel much more like that.
Yeah.
In terms of that idea of they do have all of these different tactics that they can use, and like the codex is supposed to be about this massive flexibility, but then you looked at old Marine armies and you're like, I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Like
it's all the same.
Okay, a tactical squad, it's flexible because it has a heavy weapon and a flamer. That's great. Cabalite warriors can do pretty much the same thing with the Dark Lance. Like, how does that make you flexible?
Yeah.
Well, now you can actually, when you open up the Space Marine Codex, the flexibility, there's so much flexibility, it can be sometimes hard to write a list. Because you're like, which parts do I take and what do I put together? And that's a good problem to have.
It's a glut of choices, and like either the Astartes video or play any of the video games that they've made around Space Marines. I mean, like the Space Hulk Deathwing.
That's a good game.
Video game. I mean, they needed to clear out an entire ship that was infested with gene stealers. They sent 3 Deathwing Terminators, right? Yeah. Like, are you going to send more? That's all you need. You need 3 Deathwing Terminators.
We don't have a lot of those. Yeah. We're sending 3. That's a big deal.
And that's all you really need. Yeah. But, I mean, that plays to what I think a lot of people are like about Space Marines is it is low model count.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, that is another very attractive thing.
Oh, totally.
Is how low model count it is for getting stuff together and moving models in a tournament, 3 a day or 4 a day, if that's what the tournament does.
Sure.
Is just way easier and way more fun to play.
They are. So let's talk about the plastics, for example. The latest plastics. So the first thing we did, I went out and I had my Dark Imperium half. And then I went and got, some more intercessors, and I'm building these kits, and I'm like, these things are amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because up until then I've been working with AdMech. And AdMech, the plastics are quote unquote new, but they're probably about 5 years old in the development cycle, and they feel like an older version of plastics. These new Marine plastics are freaking amazing.
They are amazing. So for anybody that has not built any of these newer Space Marines, even the Centurions aren't bad. But the intercessors or the aggressors, like the real intercessors, ones that have all the removable shoulder pads and knee pads and everything, everything has a perfect spot that it clicks into.
Yep.
I mean, building like 120 plus orcs, like things lined up okay, but you had to kind of
hold the arms.
Exactly.
You had to have one of those nice GW things that like held everything in place. With these new Primaris Space Marine kits, they have little notches and things click in, and and the knee pads snap in. They have like a snapping sound that okay, that's on. You don't have to hold it at all. They're amazing.
I know. We sound like we're still people that we have. For people that have already been building Marines, or that's so they just started, they're like, well, aren't all kits like that? No.
Yeah, and that does kind of key into my one complaint about those new plastics is that they almost feel monopose.
They are.
And they kind of are monopose.
Yeah.
So the old kits, like the old Space Marine tactical squads, the benefit there is that you could build each tactical Marine slightly different.
Yeah. Because you can move the arms.
You can move the arms and you can place the gun differently and that kind of stuff. You have a little bit of a harder time doing that with the intercessors now.
Yeah.
You're more likely to have squads that look like each other a little bit more.
They are.
But the benefit of and you can still do conversion, you can still chop, you can still apply all the tools you have. You just need to figure it out how to do it a little bit better. But the benefit of how easy it is to build these things and then how good they look when you build them. I mean, the Primaris kits are amazing. Yeah. They're stunning.
They're definitely a different look too. I remember back in one of my, Marine version 8 or whatever, when I was trying to build them, I bought a bunch of the Horus Heresy. I bought the Horus Heresy box set, and I started building the Marines. And I remember, the scale of them looked kind of silly. They do look goofy when you're looking at the old tactical Marines, because I'm like, oh well, I want to make sure they have the bolter pistol holder. Yeah, but the holder was so big, the backpack wouldn't go quite on. And I'm like, oh, this is really weird. So I was building these intercessors. I'm like, oh, that's right. I better make sure that this bolt pistol, the holster fits before I make sure the backpack. I'm like, oh, that's actually scaled correctly. So you can actually put these things on. They don't feel like they're just these ridiculous things that are clamped to like their entire thigh.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You bought Betrayal at Calth as well?
I did.
I have it as well.
I did. I was going to go 30K. Oh, that was my Alpha Legion phase. I went through an Alpha Legion phase.
Oh, yeah.
It was a whole thing.
See, here's the fun thing about Alpha Legion. You can still have an Alpha Legion phase. They're just pretending to be a different chapter.
Yeah. That's actually not a bad idea. Anyways, okay, we'll talk about like picking one in a little bit. But the plastics are pretty amazing. Also, they're not fiddly. Now, Matt, you and I have been used to dealing with like Eldar, Dark Eldar, or Admech, where stuff just snaps constantly.
Just snaps off.
And the new Banshees, new Jane Czar, I'm like, oh, Jane Czar's held on by her hair.
By,
of course,
like 4 strands of hair.
of course she is.
Yeah.
These Marines they're chunky. They don't necessarily. They just feel like they can take tournament play really easy.
I can't tell you what would snap off on any of the new kits.
Yeah.
Outside of maybe like the really big vehicles, some of the gun barrels sticking out.
Yeah.
But in terms of the infantry, no.
And also they're easy to paint.
Yeah,
Yep.
they are really easy to paint. I mean, most of them, unless you're doing like scouts or you use the helmetless heads for your intercessors for some reason.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to paint flesh tones.
No.
I mean, most of it's armor, and there's really sharp edges that that are easy to highlight. And,
Yeah. That's why I think they call them a beginner army. However, I don't think this codex is a beginner codex.
No.
There's a lot.
No,
here.
I would not recommend it to somebody wanting a easy introduction to 40K.
Yeah.
There's
if you
too
wanted-
many variables.
There's a lot.
If you wanted to run something like Ultramarines or something, I mean, that's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there is quite a bit of rules.
Even
still.
then, you're talking about buying multiple relics and
Yeah.
sub-relics. And
It would have to be
successor
something
relics
where you
and-
play without a lot of stuff. Like
Yeah.
no relics, no powers. Let's just play the data slates, which I don't know. I mean, to start off, it might make sense. But
Yeah.
the other thing that's appealing to players who've been around a while, like myself and Matt and others, is that this codex is really, really deep. There's a lot there. And it's it's just a lot of interesting play styles. Like a lot of really interesting play styles. So you came back from Nova and you said, I can't play orcs anymore.
Can't play 200 models.
And so, and what is it? Was it Michael said, hey, why don't you try Marines? Or how did you decide that?
Yeah, I was making some tank busters in Michael Snyder's. They're like, that army is really not your style, right? I'm like, yeah, positive thinking, Michael. Positive thinking. It's only one tournament where I got completely exhausted. And what's your play style is you need all the Marine models. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Low model count, elite, tactics based, a lot of versatility,
options.
Options
throughout the game.
Yeah.
When building.
Yeah. And I think it makes a lot more sense. And to me, it is because it's so flexible and you could build lots of different lists with it. But Marines is just a deep, dark hole. I mean, there's a lot there. When you pull up the battle scribe and you go, oh, there's 20 HQ, whatever. I mean, you're just like, wow. Okay.
It's a large list.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
But also I think it's just, when we talk about the ease of use, low model count, they don't break very easily. It's just an easily transportable army. And I don't know that the codexes were very interesting until now. I think they finally got it right where it feels like they're kind of an elite army with a lot of power behind them. Truthfully, the points probably could go up a little bit, if I'm honest.
They're a little overtuned in terms of their strength.
Yeah.
But in terms of theming and options and flexibility, they nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was released at too powerful of a point, but I don't think the power is necessarily coming from there are too many options. I think it's just the options are too cheap.
Yeah. So we have League Nights, and League Night there's always a group of us that are sitting around building, and then there's a group that are playing. And a couple weeks ago, we were sitting around, and they were all building Space Marines. I was building Space Marines. You were building Space Marines. Friend Colin was building Space Marines. I think Michael had just finished his Space Marine army. Everyone's building Space Marines. We've all gotten Space Marine happy. And a friend, Sean, he's a dedicated Blood Angel player. He goes, "You all making me sick. You all disgust me."
I think we made the comparison to we were all sitting around with our little iPod minis, and here is Sean, the OG with his original like brick-sized iPod from
with the physical buttons.
Yeah, with the physical wheel that had the wheel that held.
No, before the wheel.
There
was one before the wheel that had the physical buttons.
It was huge. It was the size of a brick, and it held like 10 songs.
Yep.
And that was amazing. Like, you guys are a bunch of posers. I'm the real deal.
Well, I kind of think that is going to be a thing that everyone's going to be doing. Like, I think Space Marines, they're just going to be a thing. They're all over the place now.
Yep.
And I think it's because not only they're accessible for newer players, but also they're just an interesting codex for the first time in a long time.
And to be honest, Space Marines get a lot of people into 40K.
They do.
You know, they are the most world-facing element of the universe in terms of like, if you are not a 40K fan, what are you going to see the most of 40K? Just displayed by GW and licensed out in games. It's going to be Space Marines.
And Mark, you've said before that the way that Space Marines go is kind of the way that 40K goes a little bit.
Yeah.
A good Space Marine, a good healthy Space Marine population is good for 40K in general, because they're the poster boys. Because when 40K came out, it was only 3 races, right? It was Space Marines, Orcs, and Eldar,
and then Guard, like humans. But
Guard was on there.
Yeah, but they were kind of rolled into the Space Marine
Yeah.
area as well.
But I mean, if you look at like the range of stuff that's available, those 4 have some of the most options available to them. Like there's an entire Forge World book for Guard. There's an entire Forge World book for Space Marines. The Eldar range isn't as massive, but the Orc range is huge.
It's nuts.
Most of it's not going to be usable in match play here pretty soon. I mean, but we won't go on that one. But just the amount of options that Space Marines have because they've been around for so long, combined with this new book and all these new chapter rules, it's going to be really interesting
for sure. I really want to make sure I finish. I'm actually at a place now where I have just about every single Eldar unit. The only thing I'd be doing now would be maybe replacing things. So even if they come out with, they just came out with new plastic Banshees. I actually already have Banshees and I might buy them, but I don't feel like, I actually feel like I have some runway here where I can build a Marine army and not get sidetracked again. Because I want to build the latest Eldar cool thing because I think right now there aren't a lot of new Eldars. I have enough now.
Well, let's see what comes with Psychic Awakening.
We'll see.
Additionally. But
we'll see what else
I doubt that
out.
you're going to be making large purchases.
I don't think so. Yeah, just slight replay. And also, I mean, with Eldar, I imagine there will be something be released. And I imagine every time Marines get something good, Eldar follows suit because Eldar has always been kind of the counter to Marines for some reason. And so we'll see what happens with them. But I'm hoping that I can ride Marines for a little while because we'll see kind of how the new releases shake up.
Yep.
This is the first time they released something with the codex and supplements because they haven't had that before. And this is kind of a new way of releasing content. So the Codex Space Marines have all the data slates and it has basically the high-level rules and strats and all that kind of stuff. And then they have these things called supplements, which have lore in them, but they also have an entire new section of rules and maybe their unique data slates. Do we think this is something that's going to happen with other armies? Does this feel like this is the way of they're going to make sure that rather than have to reprint the same thing over and over again, they basically reprint one and they have a bunch of supplements so they can flesh out the rules, but the data slates will always be the same?
It feels similar to me as when they were releasing campaign books with formations in them to flesh out areas.
Yeah,
like when the Demonkin of Khorne. Or whatever it was called.
Khorne Demonkin.
Yeah, Khorne Demonkin. When that came out, and it gave them so many formations and so many options and the Blood Tide and stuff like that. If this feels like a development of that, I would not be surprised to see it applied to other armies.
Yeah.
I think there are armies where it doesn't match. Where it doesn't really
matter.
It doesn't matter that much.
You don't need a High Fleet Kraken supplement. It's not much different than
there's likely it's going to happen with like Chaos Space Marines, right?
Yeah,
definitely. They
definitely.
are segmented up a lot like Space Marines are.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that there'd be Chaos Space Marines like a codex, and then there'd be a World Eater supplement.
Yeah,
and there'd be like an Jiminy Cricket Iron Warriors supplement.
Yeah, exactly.
Things like that.
Exactly. Or I wouldn't be surprised to see a few Eldar ones. For craft worlds, for the craft worlds that really are quite different. If they want to do like a spirit host kind of a thing with
and Iliendan,
like that kind of thing. But I don't see it happening for every
faction.
and I definitely don't see it happening for every sub faction.
Yeah,
we're not going to get a book for catechins. I don't think we're going to get a supplement for catechins or for Mordians or any of that.
They'd have to have units for that. Yeah, it'd be difficult to do that. However, the choose your own chapter. And in fact, I think we'll see that for everything. Expanded. We'll see probably the choose your own craft world. We'll see the choose your own guard. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer that I think we're going to see moving forward for a lot of these things.
If you talk to a bunch of old, salty dog Space Marine players, a lot of them will tell you that their belief was 4th edition Space Marines were the best codex.
Why?
And it's because the design your Space Marine chapter rules were in 4th edition. You could do crazy things. I mean, you could design some silly things like, oh, I have Devastator squads as troops, and my troops can infiltrate. So I have infiltrating Devastator squads, you know, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it was silly, and they didn't quite have enough limits on it, but it meant that you as a player had insane amount of control. And maybe I'm thinking the 3.5. That might be 3.5. It's been long enough that I can't remember exactly which one it was. Right in that area. This is the same time period when demon princes were so complicated that Chaos players were running illegal demon princes without knowing.
Yeah.
They were like a bunch of different war gear, and some of it was exclusive with marks, and then
it was
and gifts and all that kind of thing. But they have figured out a way to bring it back in a controlled way.
Yeah.
In a limited way where you're getting that freedom, but you're not creating these situations where people are running illegal stuff without even realizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine we're going to see that for a lot of things because there are I wouldn't be surprised if Ulthway had its own supplement because Eldar have been around long enough that those things are fleshed out.
Yeah.
Because we've seen them before. That's another thing too. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't know every codex is it, but I imagine everyone will have there'll be a choose your own hive fleet. I bet at some point. We'll see. But the basic rules for Marines right now, and this is the thing about Marines is you look at their data slates. There's so much more to it than just their data slate.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's where it gets a little bit confusing. So especially if you're a new player, so you have this thing called the data slate, which of course has the rules. Then there's just this pile, a literal pile of rules on top of it. So the Marines get the Angels of Death rule, which is not just a rule, it's multiple rules kind of rolled up into one. The first is they have a +1 attack on the charge, word charge, or heroic intervention. So that is the nice thing about Marines. It was always so weird. I remember thinking, why do they have a single attack? This makes zero sense. Why? And in fact, we talked about why are catechins more scary in combat than a dang Marine?
Yep.
So now they've given them +1 attack on the turn they were charged or were charged, which is cool.
They gave that to every Space Marine,
Which
was nice.
Yes.
Which was nice that they gave that to Space
Chaos
Wolves and
as well.
Blood Angels and and Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah, Space Marines. It makes total sense.
Yeah, Khorne Berserkers got even more on brand for them, where they're charging in and doing a lot of attacks and stuff like that. So
you can see if this is the new power level, and you know that Marines right now, as an aside, are probably the most powerful thing we've seen. The codex creep is real. I just think that means in the future we're going to see even more stuff. The chaos. I don't know. It's going to be a while, but I think the chaos is going to be even more off the chain.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
Yeah. So they have and they shall know no fear. So they reroll morale, which they've always had. They have what's called bolter drill. And Sean, can you explain bolter drill to me?
Yeah. So
truthfully, it's slightly confusing to me, even thinking about it out loud. So.
Yeah. So bolter drill is just some additional checks that you can do to see if you can rapid fire, right? So a rapid fire weapon, you can rapid fire if you're in half range. That's true for everybody, right? If you're at half range or lower, you can rapid fire. Space Marines just add a few other conditions where they can rapid fire and double those shots. So instead of just having to be at half range, they can not move.
Yeah.
So if you don't move as a Space Marine, you can rapid fire up to full range.
Got it.
If you are a Terminator or a bike, you can always rapid fire.
Or a Centurion.
Or a Centurion.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can always rapid fire. And then they had it on vehicles there for a little while, and then they went, no, let's go ahead and scale that one back, because there were some vehicles that
had hurricane bolters.
that were causing some issues for them.
Yeah.
Only Dreads kept.
And then Dreadnoughts kept it. So a Dreadnought with the Storm Bolter can always fire at 24 inches.
Yeah.
And that's really it.
Yeah.
So it seems really complicated, but it really is just...
It's just a rapid fire check then.
Yeah.
If they haven't stood still, they get the full range out to the rapid... Because normally rapid fire is half range if they move, but if they stood still, it's full. And if there's Terminator Centurions are on bikes. Yeah. That makes sense.
It was a good example of GW's beta rules system because, here's this bolter drill thing, and like, well, this is was this really thought out? Because there's some holes in this, like Deathwatch bolters. Deathwatch bolters are already really good because of the different rounds that they can load into them.
Yeah.
And Deathwatch players are like, ayo! But then they yanked that away from Deathwatch bolters.
Which is good, because their bolters are ridiculous.
It was oppressive.
They're special issue ammunition. And truthfully, they could have just given... Because that is an old Stern Guard space. They could have just given that to all Marines, and then it would. But it went. I don't know. Then Deathwatch would have felt weird. It wouldn't have been as interesting. So
Yeah.
then they have what's called combat doctrines, and combat doctrines are essentially was a Devastator, Tactical, and Assault.
Yep.
And every turn you start off in Devastator, and you can't move. You have to go in sequence. So you have to go Devastator to Tactical to Assault. So the idea is that Marines, they sit and they shoot the first turn. They get into position. Tactical, they're kind of mid range. They're doing their, I guess, tactical stuff, and then by third turn they're assaulting. So it's kind of these phases of the battle, as outlined by the Codex Astartes or whatever.
Yep.
So that's what these doctrines are. So each of these doctrines are. Sean, I'll have you explain these again.
Yeah. So with these doctrines, you can choose to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot go backwards.
Yep.
So that's an important piece to know. You can change the doctrine with a strat for a single unit.
Yeah.
But each doctrine is going to give bonuses to specific weapon types and specific actions.
Yeah.
So the Devastator doctrine is all about heavy weapons.
Yeah.
It's they get additional AP.
Yeah.
Which is very useful.
Yeah.
Very, very useful. And then the Tactical doctrine adds extra AP to rapid fire assault weapons, and then with assault it increases the damage and the AP of not damage, increases damage
AP.
for white scars. It increases the AP on melee attacks, and so the idea there, the thematic idea, is that you are trying to replicate, like you said, how a Space Marine army would have a shock and awe campaign.
Yeah.
Right. Think about there's an enemy position, now it's taking bombardment, and then Space Marines move forward and are killing a lot of squads, and then they move in and they finish up, by crunching skulls with fists and bolter.
Yeah.
shots.
Yeah. And so actually, tactical is rapid fire and assault.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So
then
pistol is not included.
Assault is pistol.
Okay.
It's combat. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So pistols are put into assault.
And Devastator has grenade as well.
Oh
Grenade
yeah,
heavy.
I forgot about that.
I forgot about grenade.
I'm glad you double checked me on that, because
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of experience with
Yeah.
the doctrines right now, so I'm glad you double checked me
Do
on
they
that.
have Doctrines last edition?
Yes, they did. They had doctrines in 7th edition. You had cards, and you got to choose which doctrine you used.
okay.
Oh
And
wait.
you-
Okay.
and- yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you could.
Because you set out
yeah.
7th
And
edition.
you had to change each doctrine each turn, and there was a way to repeat, maybe not. I think there was like a formation where
you could only use it once.
You could only use it once.
Yeah.
Or you
That
were
was
able
a-
to use it twice.
That was a
Yeah.
Codex Space Marine thing.
Yeah,
right?
it was a Codex Space Marine, and it
yeah.
was one of the other frustrating parts about battle companies. They had those doctrines.
Yep.
GW and their, they did it right into where, hey, if not every detachment in your army has combat doctrines, none of it gets combat doctrines.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that includes the assassin. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot bring in an assassin and have combat
And
doctrines.
combat doctrines are powerful enough that what it's doing is they're basically saying you should run a mono Space Marine army.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love that idea of, I've been pounding the drum for it for a long time, of incentivizing monofaction armies.
Yeah.
Not de-incentivizing soup, incentivizing monofaction.
Agreed.
This is a great mechanic for it. And the really big thing that they do with doctrines now is that when they come with a chapter, that chapter can play around with specific doctrines to represent
Its unique
the
spin
moment
on- yeah.
in that battle that chapter is the most effective at.
Yeah.
So for Iron Hands, it's going to be in the Devastator doctrine,
Yeah.
and for Ultramarines, it's in the Tactical doctrine, and in White Scars, it's in the Assault doctrine.
The assault doctrine.
I mean, that's a perfect way to replicate or represent. Hey, here's what these armies are good at. Here's where they focus on. Here's
Yeah.
where they try to spend a lot of their time in.
Yeah. It's interesting that they basically forced you to go through a sequence. And so White Scar is getting their benefit in the assault doctrine. It means they, at the earliest, is turn 3.
Yeah.
They have to sort of move through the sequence to get to it to turn 3.
And they have ways of delaying their assaults until turn 3. I
Yeah.
mean, they can sneak on from the board edge and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah. But that's just, it's so yeah, before I think that's right, you could choose them.
Yeah.
And I think they were slightly different, but now it's a sequence. So I start off in Devastator, and I could move to Tactical, or I could stay in Devastator. And if you're Iron Hands, you're probably just going to stay in Devastator the whole game.
It's
probably.
so useful.
Yeah. The thing is, why this is slightly confusing is because I look at a data slate of a Marine. Let's say it's a Devastator Marine, and I say, I have 1 attack. Well, I have 1 attack unless I'm charged or we're charged, or I have 1 attack until it matters, and then I actually have 2.
Yep.
So it doesn't say that on the data slate, but I have to know they have this rule here. I'm thinking for new people here. I have a leadership of 8, except that I have this thing called, Angels of Death. So I have this morale thing, I have combat doctrines. Well, my last cannon's a -3. Oh, wait a minute, but I'm in the Devastator, so it's -4 now.
Yeah,
so there's all these in the bolter drills, rapid fire. Well, if I look in the major rules, the rapid fires, well, no, but then I have bolter drills. So there's all these additions to the core rules and even their data slates that you kind of have to understand when you're starting Marines.
Yep, there's a large knowledge.
Rules on rules on rules.
I know I'm gonna mess up this stuff. I just know it. I'm like, oh, what AP is that? Oh, wait. Oh, no, wait. I'm in that tactical now, so I shouldn't actually have this AP. Whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's just one of those things that you're gonna have to kind of learn.
But if you think about it like this, I mean, you play AdMech. I mean, you have to remember what canonical you're using.
Yeah,
and things like that.
I do that badly right now.
And you've been able to remember that pretty well. I mean, you started out, you were halfway through your shooting phase, like, oh yeah, I forgot to choose mechanical 2 phases ago.
Like, it doesn't matter at this point. I already picked the 2 that are good.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that, and then there's chapter tactics,
Yep.
which are the actual tactics for each of the chapters. And I actually think the chapter tactics now they affect vehicles and dreadnoughts.
Yes.
Bolter drill does
Which is
not
so
affect
important.
vehicles,
No.
but chapter tactics affect vehicles, basically everything.
Yes.
Which was what I think everyone was clamoring for.
That was always my biggest complaint.
Yeah, it was. It was an issue.
Space Marines suffered from, first codex.
Yeah. And a hangover
days.
from 7th.
Yeah, hangover from 7th. They were kind of put in the penalty box a little bit, especially drop pods. Drop pods were put in a penalty box next to warp spiders.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 100 points, 100 plus
and the
points.
Wraith Knight, yeah.
Yeah, then Wraith Knight, warp spiders, drop pods. All in the same penalty box together. And they were not great. I mean, they probably got play tested a lot more than the other codexes did, to be honest, because those first 4 codexes are rough. I mean, they're still kind of rough.
Yep.
Like the Chaos Space Marines, Grey Knights, and
I think AdMech.
And AdMech was not great when it came out.
No, it's still. There's been some characters that have come out that have made it kind of interesting, but
And their points reductions have really helped.
Their points had to go down. But you're right; they were fairly bland actually, and now there's just a lot more to it. But the chapter tactics are all basically really interesting, and they're all. We won't go through all of them here, but all of the first founding chapters plus Black Templars, because they're not technically a first founding. They're a successor to Imperial Fist. Anyways, but all of the major, the big six, let's count them off. Ultramarines, White Scars, Imperial Fists, Salamanders, Raven Guard, Iron Hands, that's 6, and then 7 is Black Templars. So 7.
Crimson Fists are part of it.
And Crimson Fist came out in a White Dwarf.
Yep.
And then if you really want to get crazy, you can say Blood Ravens were also in a White Dwarf as well.
Yeah, but you're right, 6.
6, and then plus we don't really know what's going to happen with. So we know probably that they're going to release an Iron or Imperial Fist and Salamanders as next 2, but I don't know what's going to happen with Templars. They're not going to be rolled up into Fists.
There were no rumors about them being included in Fists, which is sad. So
because they're super cool. They have their own chapter tactics though. So there you go.
Yep.
Anyways, but the chapter tactics are an additional layer of rules on top of it, specific to the chapters. The thing is, inside in the Space Marine Codex, you have war gear, and then you have relics, which is kind of interesting. It still takes up a relic slot, but you have special issue war gear, and then you have the relics, and the relics are meant to be like the really, really interesting. And the war gear is things like mastercrafted, improved weapons, and stuff like that.
Haywire bolts, for bolter. And,
Then you have warlord traits, but you don't just have warlord traits. You have warlord traits and then Vanguard warlord traits, because Vanguard are the newest flavor of Primaris Marines.
The newest arm of
Primaris. And they all have kind of the super sneaky Reaver pattern sort of armor, Phobos pattern.
Phobos.
Then you have normal versus Vanguard psychic powers, and this is all in the same book, the standard Space Marine book right now. And then, of course, that is all inside that book, and then you have stratagems as well, like you assume that every other book has. And then, of course, chaplains have their own litanies that they can do.
Which I love that they actually brought in a prayer system for them.
Yeah.
Like finally, chaplains actually feel a bit like what they're supposed to be.
Well, they started with apostles with Dark Apostles. I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah, and I was jealous.
Yeah.
I was like, I want my chaplains to be like that instead of just being, +1 or whatever it may be.
So I guess what I'm trying to, even before you get into the supplements, there is just, again,
there's so much.
There's a lot to digest here. And right now, there's a lot of obvious things getting played, and people are kind of picking up a lot of obvious stuff as far as like more competitive play goes. But even just starting off, Pick your warlord trait. Okay. Who's my warlord?
Yeah, right.
What relic
Is it
am I
going to be a
choose?
normal? Is it going to be a vanguard? Is it going to be a chapter specific? Is it going to be a successor? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it gets complicated fast.
And then, of course, there's the chapter specific ones. So we have 4 supplements that come out. They have their own unique spin on the combat doctrine. So they have their own sort of unique, interesting additional rule to the combat doctrine. They have their own relics. They have their own stratagems. They have their own traits, their own powers. And of course, the rule that they have, their chapter tactic.
And their own primaris out characters.
Yes. And a lot of them have their own characters. Yes.
Because Marnius Calgar, when he succumbed to the peer pressure of Robert Gilman, like, hey, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Come on, do this primaris thing. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then Corso Khan did it.
Yep.
Shrike was he's primaris.
Yeah, he's primaris up.
He's Phobos.
Primaris up, and then our old Iron Father.
Which never was a character before. He just sort of existed.
They just wanted to make a primaris Tech Marine, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it's an awesome kit.
Yeah.
And then it looks like it's not going to be Vulcan.
It's going to be a captain of 3rd Company.
Yeah. So there will be a Salamander's primaris stuff, but it's not Vulcan his time.
Not Vulcan, which is interesting. Yeah.
Which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
As an aside, what do we think of the Shrike model? What do you guys think?
You just had to bring it up.
I do.
Beak helmet over Spider-Man 3 haircut.
Yep. Put the helmet on, and it's a gorgeous model. It really is. I feel like maybe it has a little bit too much going on in some sections.
A little bit.
But Primaris in general can lean into that, especially the sneaky, tactical Vanguard stuff.
Tactical.
Yeah. They just,
It's such a
I have
good
a
way to
scope
put it.
and a sight and a laser sight, and I'm strapped with
Pouches,
grenades and pouches. And I mean, he's got pouches all over the place. Shrike
Yeah.
does. I mean, he kind of looks like he's out of a Rob Liefeld comic out of the 90s.
He does. He does. He's got raven feathers and things too.
Yeah.
He just needs to embrace, a fanny pack. I know it's not the most hip thing, but I think a fanny pack would
Actually,
just
fanny
replace...
packs are in.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a lot of students wearing them. So,
I don't know why I like the fact that the Raven Guard all have the emo haircuts. I'm absolutely tickled by that. I freaking love.
I mean, they're
That
they're
ridiculous
Primarch
hair.
left, and the only thing he said was "nevermore."
Yeah,
I mean, come on,
it's-
it's their brand, right? Like he's just leaning into it, and I really do think they're gorgeous models.
Yep.
And I tend to prefer the more traditional look of the Primaris regular line, not the Vanguard line, where they're a little bit more clean.
Yeah.
But I really do. I mean, if you're into that tactical look, which I'm using that phrase tongue in cheek here.
Yeah.
The incursors look really cool.
Yeah.
They've got all the special
guy dropping the smoke
authorization,
grenade
dropping
and
the smoke grenade and
yeah.
stuff like that. Just a lot of really cool detail.
Yeah.
And I think Shrike honestly is a really good model, and it's not hard to get that helmet off.
No, I know. We know people that it's pretty easy to do. The only thing I don't like about that Shrike model is the little rowan he's standing on is really just blah.
Yeah,
It's just boring.
and you have to include it.
Yeah, it's like our Shadow Specters. Our Shadow Specters are so boring because they're on those big jagged rocks. I'm like,
Yep.
Yeah.
how come every single one of you is jumping off a rock?
Yeah,
I mean,
right? Like, how many rocks are in the area?
I think I would have to pick like a piece of AdMech scenery or something and make it look a little more interesting.
Make sure that it's the same height, or else you're modeling for advantage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd have to be exact same height. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is super annoying. But now we have successor chapters, and successor chapters. I have to admit, this took me a long. It still slightly confuses me, and I've seen questions posted online that I'm still confused by. But a successor chapter is you choose 2 rules. You declare a successor to one of the first founding chapters. So you actually pick here's my parent chapter. You choose 2 of your own rules, so you don't get that chapter tactic that is unique to that. But if you declare, say, I'm an Ultramarine, let's say I'm an Ultramarine successor chapter, you get access to their special combat doctrine, which is their variation of their combat doctrine. I'm like, oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
You get all their stratagems.
Yep.
You get all their traits. You get all their psychic powers.
Yes.
You get their special. You get the special issue war gear,
Yep.
which is kind of the upgraded war gear. You miss out on the chapter specific relics. However,
There's a strat.
there's a strat where you can actually get a chapter specific
and
relic.
you miss out on their special characters.
And
Yeah.
you miss out on the special characters.
Yep.
So if you take so that is actually why it's difficult to choose an Iron Hands successor chapter because
you don't get
would
Pharaohs.
not get Pharaohs, who is aggressively costed. Is a really nice way of saying.
Yeah, that's a really neutral way of
We
saying
saw
that.
his rules come out and we're like, oh, he's got to be like 180.
Well, yeah,
something like
170,
that.
180. And then he's 110.
You guys,
Oh my goodness.
He's a Tech Marine. Other Tech Marines are like 65 points. Come on.
Even cheaper than that.
I know.
Yeah,
that's true.
come on.
35.
But that is the thing about a successor chapter is you miss out on the characters, and if you want to take a chapter specific relic, you have to spend a CP. But that's really it. But you get to choose your two traits, and there's some really interesting traits. But there's typically, if you look at the chapter tactics, there's like 3 good things, and so successors will get 2 of them. So it's just depending on the mix and match what you want to do.
Yeah, the ones that you pick are going to be like pieces. You know, like you can get the Raven Guard. Cover if you're outside
Sneaky.
of 12, like the sneaky element, but you're going to miss out on the other piece of it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I like it.
It basically means that of all these rules, that if all the combinations of these things, there's even more combinations of these things because now you have these choose your own chapters. And to say nothing of the fact that we're going to see people have mixed armies with multiple different chapters of Marines. Now, if you run an army with, let's say, Iron Hands and Ultramarines, I'm not sure why, but whatever, or 2 successors to even be more complicated, you lose out on those combat doctrines, right? You lose out on the special Iron Hands version or twist to the combat doctrine. I think that's exactly what happens. If you choose a if you decide to,
you still get the Angel of Death.
You still get the Angel. You still get the combat.
You still
doctrines.
get the combat doctrines, but maybe
I think
pull out a codex. Let's double check ourselves.
See, this is how confusing this is because there's just so many variables.
There's so many
all these
checks here. Oh my goodness! I just saw the Raven Guard supplement for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, the haircut is just perfect.
I love it.
It's exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah, I love
Black hair coming over the side,
I absolutely
shaved
love
on
it.
one side. You know that his parents don't understand him.
Okay, so we'll look at the Iron Hand ones. If your army is Battleforged, then in addition to the detachment abilities gained from Codex Space Marines, unit in your army gain a Calculated Fury ability, so long as, with the exception of unaligned units, every unit from your army is an Iron Hands unit or is from the successor chapter.
So you do get access to their...
You don't get access. You have to be, the entire army has to be
units in your army.
either Iron Hands or a successor chapter to Iron Hands.
Yep. And it has to all be the same. You can't run Iron Hands and a successor and keep it. Yeah, it has
the
to
entire
all
army has to be the same. So to get Calculated Fury, which by the way is their version of, like their variation of the Devastator Doctrine, which
Ignore
is
move and shoot on heavy and reroll ones on
Reroll
heavy
ones,
during the
yeah,
Devastator Doctrine. Incredibly good.
So all of the supplements have their own unique variations of the chapter, the combat doctrine that makes it even better. And you do lose that if you combine. Basically, if you have an army that has it doesn't have all of that single. Either all Iron Hands or all successor. You can't actually have an Iron Hands and then an Iron Hands successor in the same army and get around that, which is kind of strange.
So they all need to be like an Iron Hand successor.
They all need to be the same.
Yeah. Like if you ran Raven Guard and Raptors in the same army, you're losing out on Surgical Strike.
But if you ran all Raptors, you would get Surgical Strike,
you're good.
Which is their special assault doctrine.
Yep.
Is it tactical?
It's tactical doctrine.
Yes, tactical.
You're right.
Yeah. We roll against. Yep. So that is where they are basically incentivizing you to take single mono faction, not just mono faction, but mono supplement, mono chapters.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that we'll see this moving forward,
which I'm entirely in support.
Totally with. I think that what you do is you determine if I lose out on this unique additional rule to this doctrine, will I be losing out by combining?
Yeah. Is it worth losing this to pick up the benefits of what I'm picking up?
There's probably a lot of people who say it's probably fine. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how they
There's going to be lots of
around.
armies, I think, where they're not going to care.
Yeah, for sure. So then what do you choose? Now, do you choose a chapter? Or do you choose a generic scheme? Or do you select like a well-known, unknown successor chapter? Do you lock yourself into a single chapter? Or do you go generic?
Why choose a major?
That's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah.
But, Sean, you were inspired by Dark Angels.
Yeah, and but I'm not playing Dark Angels, right?
Yeah.
I'm playing my successor.
Yeah.
And while my successor does have a lot of Dark Angels inspired iconography on it, it's not in the lore anywhere that they're Dark Angels successors, you know.
That's true.
So that does give me flexibility, you know, having my own scheme. And I think it's a really, really fun part of Space Marines.
To build your own.
To design your own chapter, to figure out how do they operate, what are they like. You know, I'm not saying like, you know, write out a story and the force organization hierarchy of your chapter, but you know, I've done that and it's fun. Yeah. And it's a big part of what I feel like the Space Marine chapter idea is really fun with, is that they're so different. There's so many different chapters with different traditions and different homeworlds, and some don't have homeworlds, and some, you know, all these different ideas, that making that chapter yours is a big part of it. Designing that scheme, making up those characters, that kind of idea. When
you decide to choose a chapter, let's say you say, I want to go Raven Guard. There's the limitations are that you're always going to be a Raven Guard. You're playing Raven Guard. And so if the rules become something you don't like, or they're not as powerful, or you just don't really like the play style, you're sort of at the whims of what GW has set up for you. However, you get access to, quote unquote, all the lore of Raven Guard. You can go deep into the lore, you can read the books about them, you get really excited about them. But if you choose a generic chapter, a lot of times, kind of like you said, you kind of have to make it up or make it yours. Yeah. So it's kind of. I visited England, and we went in and looked at the Tower of London, and they have the beefeaters, or the guys with the crazy hats. And they're sergeant majors in the English Army, and they're doing the tour. Yeah. And he's talking about all the history of it, and he says, "Well, are there any Americans here?" And a bunch of us raised our hands. He goes, well, all of this history could have been yours had you just paid your taxes. So it's the idea that if you choose a lore, or you choose a chapter, you get access to kind of all this cool stuff around it if lore is important to you and it speaks to you. But I kind of think I would hate to box myself in. Like you said, why choose a major? I want to try out different rules. Rules are important and cool, and sometimes playing with lots of rules is kind of fun.
Yeah, because there are some chapters that some units are great in, and they are terrible in others. Yeah. Spoiler alert: Assault Marines are terrible in every chapter. Yeah. So
they're bigger, beefier cousins. The Vanguard Marine, though.
Yeah, Vanguard.
They're good in some. They're good in some armies.
Vanguard are good, but I mean, there are Assault Centurions are great in Raven Guard, and they're great in White Scars. Yep. Ultramarines, not so much. Yeah. Not so much.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point, is certain units are better in different chapters. Certain units are almost to the point of being overpowered in some versus others. But that means that regardless of the units you own or the units you like, you can find a way to play them if you basically go slightly generic. Yeah. I know people that have picked, like I think Colin was looking at going Emperor Spears, because there's an entire book series by ADB out about it, and there's no like successor to it. He can choose in whatever. And sometimes people like why I thought Alpha Legion would be cool, because they are a chapter. I can go all in on the Alpha Legion, but I can play them as anything, and that's actually lore appropriate.
Exactly.
But I think that the hardest part about starting Space Marines is like, what do I do? And I actually think the best bet for flexibility on playstyle and units is just to choose your own and just play it as whatever you want.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun artistically in designing schemes that don't match what Space Marines typically look like. Yeah. You know, like most Space Marine chapters boil down to one or two colors, major colors. Yeah. Typically split, you know, if it has two. But, same color on all the armor, and then trim. Yeah. Right? And what are you picking? You're picking helmet color, trim color, and armor color. Yeah. Well, I saw a really awesome idea for it was done. It was like a Bone Marine. It was a Dark Angel successor, but then he had red arms and a red helmet, and red shoulder pads, and something about the way that just the color blocking had happened. Yeah, it made this Marine look beefy. Yeah, like his arms, just like it was one of those things where like it drew attention to the fact that a Space Marine's arms and shoulder pads are quite large. Yeah. Like in a good way. It really was visually interesting. And then for me, I do the quartering because I'm masochistic and I want to hate every model that I paint until I finally finish it. Yeah. Whatever. That quartering style looks really awesome when applied to like tanks and dreadnoughts and that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy it. And if I had just picked, like Dark Angels Green,
it wouldn't have been
I wouldn't have gotten that. I wouldn't have gotten that interaction with it.
And that's interesting because Raven Guard have that scene where they're black, but they have like white arms oftentimes or white helmets or something like that. Iron Hands will have the white bolters. Truthfully, their schemes aren't much different. They're just the differences where they put the white and the black.
Yeah, and how much silver is included.
Yeah, pretty much.
How much eyeliner?
Yeah. That too.
Yeah. And usually there's like a pop color that go along with it. So I haven't chosen a chapter. We'll talk about my plans for Marines here in a little bit toward the end. But let's talk a little bit about primaris versus traditional Marines. The line now is split. Now, at the beginning of the edition, they only had a couple of things. They had intercessors. They had some of the what are the jumping Marines?
Inceptors. Yeah.
Now
Gravis
they have an
armor.
entire Vanguard section. So they have Gravis, they have the Primaris armor, and then they have the Phobos. It's literally almost in two. Like there almost is enough, and you can see where there's more Primaris on the horizon. If you're brand new, would you even bother collecting like the standard tactical Marines or
No.
the standard? No,
Unless you plan to play like 30K.
Those- yeah,
Unless you plan to play 30K.
yeah.
Because you look at the Marines that were included in the Betrayal of Calthan, the Burning of Prospero, you look at those kits and like, is there any way to improve on these old style, smaller Marines? And you're like, probably not. No, because they had reached kind of the pinnacle of modeling with those ones. Like, there's nothing else you could do
At that scale. They were as good as they're going to get. I mean, look at the Stern Guard kit. It's
amazing.
It's got everything you ever need from anything. They can't get much better than that.
Yeah, I still recommend, even if you're doing all Primaris,
Yeah.
pick up one Stern Guard kit, because the amount of options and upgrades and bits and stuff, you'll be making characters from it for years.
Yeah, I think the point though, what you're making, Matt, is that they had to create a completely new scale of Marines in order to keep putting out new Marine kits, because honestly, they had got there was nowhere to go. They had reached it. Those kits are actually not that old. Like the actual tactical squad box is newer than 75% of the kits that are actually on the GW site. It's a new kit for the most part. It came out with like 6th edition, I think, or 6. But they updated the tactical squad, the Vanguard vets, the assault Marines, the Devastators, and the Stern Guard. I think I'm missing something, but all the basic kits were completely upgraded. At that scale, they weren't going to get any better than that. That's it. So the new Primaris is just, we want to create more Marine kits for everyone who loves Marines. Here's the only way we can really do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the scale of Primaris. They fit, and I'm one of those players that didn't really like Primaris when it was released because of how they handled the lore of it.
Yeah, I
just
agree.
It wasn't handled
It felt
that
really
awesome,
heavy-handed. Yeah,
and I'm actually kind of one of those guys that I would have actually been fine with if they just said, "This is the new scale of Marines.
Yeah,
these are Marines like they've always been. If you want to play with the old scale, whatever." But this is a new scale that we'll be building at.
Yeah.
But I know that they did the lore so that they can bring in these new weapon systems and these new unit types. And it has been really cool. And I've come around to it.
Yeah.
But as a guy that owns hundreds at this point of traditional Marines, I wouldn't start them.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't, because they're not going to be doing something that new kits won't be doing at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, there's no Terminator analog right now.
Yeah.
But aggressors are pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no bike analog right now. Okay, but that's got to be on the horizon.
Yeah,
I think Primaris bikes are coming.
There'll be hover bikes here pretty soon.
Yeah, there's something.
Yeah.
And so when we look at that, I mean, forward project a few years.
Yeah.
We've already seen that traditional Marine kits aren't being released. They're not being designed outside of Forge World. Forge World is still pumping out 30K stuff.
Yeah.
That's really what keeps traditional Marines being designed, is 30K.
Yeah.
And Games Workshop doesn't make 30K kits.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Primaris releases from here on out.
They won't release new kits. I wonder, will they phase out those kits? Because really, like, let's say the Tactical Squad box, it's not that old.
No.
And I'm sure they've made their money on it. But to me, I'm like, I don't know. You can still buy... Jane's R has just been released, but you can still buy like Astroman from like a second-hand model.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't know if they're going to go ahead and literally just stop stocking tactical Marines, or they'll just go to like order. I don't think they're going to remove them from the book. I think we're a long ways from that. So much so that if you have tactical Marines, I wouldn't even worry about them.
I mean, they're going to stick around.
They've been out too long. I mean, people have too many of these things. They have all these tactical Marines from all the boxes they've included these things in.
Yeah.
I mean, you know they're going to stick around. I don't think we'll see them, because an intercessor is just so much more superior to to attack Marine, and even a Reaver is superior to an assault Marine, I would argue. Just from the mask alone. Come on.
Yeah, the mask is super cool.
And we've seen with the Legends, index options are going away, and a lot of those index options are old
old
classic
kits, yeah.
traditional models.
Yeah.
And so maybe we'll start to see the line slowly erode away into Legends.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So when I decided I'm going to go into Marines, it's because the Primaris kits were fleshed out enough that it felt like there's options now and there's rules to back them up. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to build vehicles and things like that, but I'm not going to build traditional Marines. The only thing I might look at there are some kits where a traditional Marine makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking like the Thunderfire cannon. But that tech Marine is so blinged out, you can't even tell what his scale is at because it just looks like a suit of armor that's there anyways.
Yep.
There are some areas where I think a traditional Marine makes sense, like a captain on a bike, and there's certain units here and there, but I can't see going back and buying a technical squad.
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
I mean, the regular size librarians still have play because they're cheaper. And
you're not buying them for their attacks.
A blinged out lieutenant makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
But there's so few Primaris lieutenants available.
I know.
Yeah,
I mean, where are you gonna
find
release one?
15 more.
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe ones without helmets.
And
with one arm holding a weapon in the sky.
Well,
that pose doesn't get used enough.
What's funny is I was going through some stuff I bought when the edition dropped, and I'm like, oh, here's an intercessor sergeant who looks just like a Primaris, but he's got a stalker bolt rifle. And I want a Primaris lieutenant with a stalker bolt. This is my new Primaris lieutenant.
Exactly.
So even when they're not called lieutenants and they're called sergeants, for the most part, they're just like Primaris lieutenants. All right, let's take a break. Let's hear a word from our sponsor, TraderA.com. When we come back, we will talk about our plans with Marines. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time, you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit, gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. TraderA is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have, he'll send you a quote, you pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that TraderA gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick? You want to get rid of it? Visit TraderA.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TraderA.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. Okay, and we're back. So let's talk about our plans, knowing everything we just talked about and how we're going to move forward. I'll start with my plans for the Marines. So again, for me, it's always been picking a chapter, and I decided that I'm going to not pick a chapter.
I choose not to choose.
Yes,
you were gonna pick a chapter, and I fully supported this chapter that you were gonna choose.
Which one?
The Emperor's Finest.
Oh, that is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, he chooses not to choose.
I choose not to choose. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out, like, darn. So back when I was, I don't know, Marine Plan 8 or 9, I'm not sure, but I was going to do Iron Hands Battle Company because that was cool. I bought this paint, specifically bought this paint to paint the Iron Hands, and it's like but it's slightly off. It's like a metallic pearl charcoal color, and it's really, really cool.
Okay.
And I was going to do this for an Iron Hands list, and I'm like, you know what? I still have that paint. So I pulled it out. It's got to stir it up a little bit. But I started using it. I'm like, oh, this is a really cool black metallic look to it.
Uh-huh.
So then I started thinking about like the color schemes. I'm like, well, I don't want it to be completely Iron Hands. What should I be? You know what I'm going to be? This is going to be the most generic, like literally a Space Marine chapter with very, very little iconography, very little like stuff.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because Primaris Marines are basically there's very little stuff on them.
Yes.
And what should I call it? I'm going to call it just a Space Marine. It's going to be a Space Marine. And somebody goes, you should just call it the Emperor's Finest. I'm like, yes, I'm going to call it the Emperor's Finest because that's what they call Space Marines or the Angels of Death.
Yep.
Either way, depending on my day.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to paint them kind of a black metallic with some white highlights in them. And so they kind of look like an Iron Hand / Raven Guard, but they're more metallic scheme. And I'm going to focus on some of the OSL for like the eyes. So I'll try to do some like blue OSL. I'm going to try to do some techniques. I might do some powdering, like weathering. The hardest part is figuring out a scheme and then a basing scheme that kind of complements it.
Yep.
So I might do like a Mars basing with some powder stuff. So the whole point of this Marine chapter is I want to push myself to try out different techniques. So I'm going to do a little more like some chipping stuff, some ink washes, and some powdering and some basing, weathering effects to make this an interesting project for me because
You
I've
kind
never
of
actually done it.
You kind of have to do that to make Space Marine armies pop, right?
I think so. You got to do something because
Yeah.
truthfully, they're not that interesting just by themselves. Like a sea of blue, I don't think is very interesting. I think that's why Dark Angels are so interesting because they have
they
green,
have so many
bone,
different-
and black.
Yep.
Blood Angels the same. They have red, black, and gold. You can make them look really cool because they're not all one color.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see how it all works out. But I think I might even try to find like a double eagle, like Aquila for their chapter, their shoulder pads.
Just
the
go
most
as generic as you can.
Yeah, as generic as possible. Lean into the generics, and I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think that's what I've got. I'm halfway through building up a list, and I think right now,
halfway for now. We've
Yep.
always wanted to avoid the Chaos or Imperium hole that you
That
fall
you fall
yourself
into.
in. Yeah.
And I'll point out that he's already fallen into it. It
yeah.
started with knights.
It started with
and then he
knights.
had an AdMech army.
Yeah.
And now he has a Space Marine army.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It
It's gone
just
too
it
far.
just keeps going. You were able to stop yourself with Chaos. You did 1,000 Suns and then you stopped.
Yeah, I started the hardest painting rubrics, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done.
I don't want to do this.
No more of this stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll see where I end up with. Right now, I have my idea is I'm just going to run Iron Hands to begin with, because it's literally the simplest point and click. But I really am intrigued by Raven Guard and the idea that you could have an entire army of infantry that none of it deploys in your deployment zone.
Yeah.
Or things like that. So I'll start with kind of the basics and just kind of move on from there. We'll see. But I really want to kind of make my way through the different types of lists you can run, because every single chapter is different.
Yeah.
And you can make your way around it and say, oh, I'll try this, I'll try that. And they all bring something different to the table. So literally you can just do Marines and make your way around all the different successor chapters and your own successor chapter. And you really, you'll never run out of play options.
Yeah, because they all play different. And you
They
can
all play different.
You can test out which one kind of speaks to you.
Yeah.
Which one you like
Yeah.
more.
So actually, now let's talk about you, Matt. This is your first Marine Army. What are your plans?
So I have my paint scheme choice is a little bit different than everybody else's. I go and look at what paint I have.
That's kind of what I did with mine. Like, what do I have?
What do I have, and what can I paint easily?
Yeah.
To a good standard. And I looked at online at there's a widely available poster that you can find that has all the chapters, and
It's a good one.
and on all the successor chapters. And at the bottom, there's like 20 or 25 that have had like one-off mentions in like Black Library novels.
Yeah.
But those one-off mentions have been enough for them to create a paint scheme for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And iconography.
Yeah.
And I chose one of those 25.
Which one did you pick?
The Death Knights.
The Death Knights. Okay.
It's like,
okay.
yeah, and their paint scheme is super simple that I can replicate. I can find shoulder pads for them, and
And you're going like skull shoulder pads, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because you want to do some level of conversion.
Yep,
Like, that
I want-
conversion's your thing.
I want to do some level of conversion, and GW, to their credit, even though they upscaled the size of the Marines, they kept the shoulder pads and the head size the
Yes,
same.
that was
Perfect.
nice.
Which was so nice.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's,
So
ver-
nice. I'm
it's
so
very
glad
nice.
they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also skull shoulder pads that you can pull from like chaos kits and things like that
Yeah.
would work perfectly. So, yeah, that's the plan.
Yep.
Iron Hands might be, to kind of the starting out point, but we'll just kind of go from there, figuring out how to mix and match things. That really works. I'm just excited about low model count.
I kind of am too. Yeah, I really am. The low model count. Low model, durable models that don't snap and break that I don't have to worry about so much.
It's going to be so nice.
It's nice. Sean, what are your plans? You have a Dark Angel successor.
I
but
do.
Truthfully, you can run it as anything.
I could.
Not only that, you have 2 Leviathans.
I do. Yeah. And they're both painted, and they both look very Dark Angel-y.
Uh-huh.
But that's pretty easy
No one,
to be like.
it's fine. No one
come
cares.
on. But I'm kind of ready to break out of my theme, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You were talking about picking a basing style that
Yeah.
helps. I didn't.
Yeah.
I did a basing style that I really like doing,
Yeah.
but it's kind of dark gray, and then my models are kind of,
So they kind of blend.
yeah, it's not that saturated.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go saturated.
Yeah.
I kind of just like want to make a chapter and just have it like blah in
Yeah.
terms of like color
Sure.
content, and I don't know exactly what that means.
Mm.
I kind of want to do purple.
No. Okay.
Like purple with some interesting basing, I think would
Purple's
look really,
such an
really
awesome
cool.
color to work with too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe even just some like dust bases with purple could look good, or something like that. You know, like a dusty desert landscape with purple and white, and maybe some other spot colors. I think it would be a lot of fun, and I wouldn't do all purple. I'd have to find some way to block color. Yep. You know, I might do purple with. I mean, after seeing the arms and helmet look, I kind of want to do something like that.
Sure.
I think it'd be really cool to do like purple with white.
Yeah.
Like that.
So the white arms and white helmet.
Yeah.
I like it. I like a darker purple too.
Yeah.
Almost a black, but you could highlight up to a nice color.
Yep.
Purple, by the way, I don't. Do you have an airbrush?
I don't.
Oh.
Well,
you have people that know.
Yeah.
And airbrushing purple is one of the it's a joy. It's just a joy.
And I love
fun.
purple as a color.
Yeah.
I love using it. I use it as a spot color very, very commonly. And I think it'd look really fun.
Purple and white or purple and black?
Purple and white.
And white. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And black is like a spot color as well.
Yeah.
Included.
You should.
You know, that's a cool palette.
I think what I struggled with as far as the basing goes is that, okay, I'm going to do more of a black metallic, which to make it pop, I have to work really hard for like OSL or the scrolls or whatever. The base itself, though, you have to make it contrast with whatever you're painting. So if you have a really bright color, like I have yellow for my AdMech, but the basing scheme is like grays with some blues and reds in it. You have to make it pop different. So I think the Martian red is kind of going to go like a more of an orangey
That'll
Martian
really
red
good.
scheme to sort of bring it apart.
And then get like the red dust on the boots.
Yeah,
and stuff.
the red dust on the
that's gonna
boots.
Look so good.
So it's interesting. Marines are a canvas. You can do whatever you want with them, and I think that's what's exciting. Is if you're going to choose a Marine army, just get nuts with it. I mean, you could go in and paint them blue if you want. I mean, that's the generic thing that most people do, and it's easy. And contrast paints make it easy, but you should try something interesting because they're so easy to paint that honestly you can get crazy with some interesting colors.
And even if you're doing a basic chapter, doing some cool twist on that chapter looks really cool. I saw a Ultramarine army that was like very grizzled and grimdark.
Yeah.
You know, like just kind of like a little bit of a darker scheme, and then they had battle damage, and you know, like the tanks had a bunch of like like rolled up things and like boxes added to them, and they looked like they'd been on campaign for a while.
Yeah.
And that's not how you see Ultramarines. Ultramarines look like they walked off the factory floor or the parade ground constantly.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you see.
Yeah.
And so seeing these like, you know, hard fought, you know, a little bit damaged Ultramarines was a really cool look.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just that kind of an idea of taking an established chapter and twisting it a little bit.
Oh, that's always good. Yeah, for sure. And I always try to take every project and like before it was yellow, I had never painted yellow and I wanted to go yellow. This is more of a metallic, but it's more of like a weathering thing. So we'll see how it goes. All right, Sean, I support your life choice. I think you should choose like a generic chapter. You have enough Marine just stuff.
Yeah, I
around.
just need to paint stuff that I had like that
you
doesn't fit with
unbuilt.
my Dark Angel. Like I have 6 aggressors sitting around that I need to build. I'm like, I'm not going to really run Dark Angels aggressors ever, so I might as well just paint them a different color. It doesn't matter that they don't fit.
And the great thing about a Raven Guard army, for example, if you're going to go Raven Guards, most of it's infantry.
Yeah.
It's not
And I've got plenty of that.
It's not that expensive to build. So, yeah, I mean, if you have a bunch of stuff, Marine stuff to sit in your closet, which most of us probably do, even people like Matt, you had some bits and bops of stuff because you're buying and selling things. Yeah. Most of us have some stuff laying around. It doesn't take much to pull a Marine army together.
Well, and think of how many box sets included Marines. Shadow Spear and then Dark Imperium, and then there was one in between Shadow Spear and Dark Imperium, wasn't there?
Tooth and Claw, I think, maybe.
Tooth and Claw.
Well, you got Dark Vengeance.
Oh, the Dark
And you've got Betrayal of Calth, of course, that one as well. But that's
Primaris like stuff.
Yeah. Primaris stuff. There is one more. Wasn't there the one against the Eldar?
Oh,
Wake the Dead.
Wake the Dead.
Wake the Dead was in there. I mean, there's so many box sets, and the APOC box included 30 intercessors.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a Redemptor Dreadnought at a really good price, too.
Yeah.
So
there are so you can't find that anymore.
No, you can't. They just have put them in all sorts of boxes, and they're very easy to get.
Easy to get, easy to build, easy to paint. And now the rules are actually really interesting. So we are not... we have not traditionally been a very Space Marine focused podcast.
No.
But I'm really glad the Codex has come out. That's been really interesting because we have a lot of people, like a lot of you listeners out there ask about questions about Space Marine lists, and often it's like, it's really hard. Now there's just so many options that there's just a lot you can do with it.
And I'm excited to see the meta churn with Space Marines. Already there are the lists, right?
The lists.
Oh God, there's so much in that book, and as supplements come out, we're just going to see so many cool new ideas and new forms of lists come out.
Yeah.
And Yeah, they're too powerful. Yeah, the meta is going to be Space Marine oppressive for a little while, but I'm really interested to see what the reaction is, and then how do Space Marines change in response to that.
I think if you're not interested in starting a Space Marine army, I can see why it might be a little bit upsetting, because it does feel like for the next several months, if you're a competitive player, the Marines are going to be everywhere. And if you're not interested in joining, it's going to be difficult to...
You're going to be defined out by how well you fight them.
Yeah,
If
and I think there's some armies that are going to have they're going to struggle, like Tau, for example, are going to struggle, especially with against Iron Hands, for example. There's going to be some really hard counter matchups, though, I think, that... It's going to be interesting because the Marines are coming out. The Sisters is probably going to come out some point this year. There's already been the box sets coming out.
Yeah, we're seeing leaks.
And I don't know. There's going to be the Psychic Awakening things that kind of rolls out. So you'll see different armies get different bits of love. But from now for a while, I mean, if you're a competitive player, LVO is kind of the end of your season, and it's coming up really quick. It's just starting to get cold outside. So to me, it's like LVO is rapidly approaching. In January, and so there's not a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, and if you're going to run Marines, you better start getting building now for sure. That's what Matt and I are doing.
Yep, build,
building them up. Yeah, all right. So that's Marines, and if you're interested in starting Marines, now is probably the best time to do it. Start small if you're new to the game, but if you're a seasoned player, there's so much here that you can unpack. We will probably do more Marine content as we go along. I'm really interested to see what happens with the Fists and the Salamanders. And there's going to be so much for Marines that, like I said, we can do a podcast every week on them. We won't do that, but we will explore
Welcome to
Marines.
the Battle Marines.
We will explore Marines again in the future for sure. All right. Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehosts@gmail.com. Tell us about your Marine schemes, or if you are a diehard anti-Marine player, that's okay. You can vent as well. We would love to hear it as well. And I totally understand if you are. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us and like us on Facebook. You can leave a review on iTunes, which does help to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebattlehosts. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show. And for $3 a month, you can get access to our Discord chat. So thank you for listening to Battle Hosts.
Remember to jump on the Emperor's Finest bandwagon.
And build a better chapter.
Awesome. Good night.